On this week's FAS TV, we are out in South Lanarkshire at the Lint Mill with Colin and Debby to hear about their smallholding. Colin and Debby moved to the Lint Mill in 2009, leaving behind their lives in Glasgow to begin their journey to self-sufficiency and to form a deeper connection to the land. The Lint Mill is currently part of an agri-environment scheme to maintain their organic status. Colin and Debby aim to be self-sufficient in food whilst adopting organic principles to work towards regenerating the soil and land.
Well, we've been here 14 years in October, and prior to that we lived in the West End of Glasgow. And after a number of years we realised that we weren't actually using the city anymore, and I had an allotment, and we also had Debbie's horse, which was on livery outside of Glasgow. So for a couple of years we decided to start looking for somewhere more rural, and then over time we finally found the Lint Mill and moved here in 2009.
In terms of how we like to sort of think about the Lint Mill, we like to think about it as a kind of holistic enterprise where all of the kind of moving parts, if you like, integrate with one another. So we rear rare breeds for meat and also to sell to other livestock owners. We grow our own fruit and vegetables. We rear sheep, pigs for pork, hens for chicken, and for eggs, of course. We keep dairy goats for our own dairy. And we also like to be able to feed our bed and breakfast from all of the produce that we make and grow here, as well as sort of feeding ourselves.
We also raise a small number of organic turkeys for the Christmas market. We get Norfolk Blacks as 6 to 7 week old poults and rear them all the way through, and then we actually do the processing and the preparation here at the Lint Mill, and then we have a mulled wine and mince pie reception for all our customers who come on the 23rd or approximately the 23rd of December to collect their turkeys. I think one of the main values that we have is that we're very committed to organic production. In Glasgow, and prior to that we were always sourcing as much organic produce as we could. And when we came here, and once the smallholding started to become a bigger enterprise for ourselves, we just wanted to then incorporate that organic approach that we had into actually certification as well.
I think one of the main attractions as well was kind of living a more simple life and a more connected life. I'm not sure that it is that simple. Growing food and rearing animals is complex in its own kind of way, but it's certainly simple in the way that it reconnects you with the means of your own production. So much of contemporary life means that we don't know how our food is grown, we don't know how our animals are reared, we have no connection with the land, and that felt really important to us, that we were able to kind of reconnect in very sort of particular ways. And I guess we also wanted to see how self-sufficient we could be, not in a kind of good life kind of way, because let's face it, we're never going to grow sugar or probably lemons in South Lanarkshire, both of which we like on our pancakes. I think sustainability only takes you so far. I think we started to realise that sustainable is great as a beginning, as a first goal, because it encourages you to live within your means, to only use the resources that you can replenish. But very quickly we, I suppose, as our commitment to the environment deepened, we realised that the kind of new developments in regenerative agriculture were really, really vital. We want to leave the lint mill enhanced. We want, if we ever leave it, we can't quite imagine that. We want to leave it better than we found it. So we want to build the soil biology. We want to build the fertility of the land, and we want to create a kind of diversity of species, both animals and plants, that will really contribute towards the resilience that we're going to need in this kind of era of climate change. So, you know, the values thing is massive for us. What started out as living simply has just made us feel like, wow, you know, this is all so connected, and that's how we've got to live our lives.
Making an income on a small holding can be difficult due to the small area of land and therefore a smaller number of animals which can be kept. Colin and Debbie have moved away from their salaried jobs over the 14 years and have diversified into a range of activities.
I think a small holding is really, it is what it actually kind of says. I mean, it's a small amount of land approximately. We have 15 acres, but I think from the people that we have had on our courses and also people that we know, you know, anything from 1 acre to 20-25 acres could be classed as a small holding. And I also think it is quite common, like with ourselves, that we have lots of little enterprises on it. As we mentioned, you know, we have our goats, we have our sheep, we have our poultry, we have our polytunnel and vegetable garden. So I think there's lots of little small elements to it, which obviously mean that there isn't a huge commercial kind of aspect to it either, which is one of the reasons, of course, that's drawn us to small holding life.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose one of the real challenges is, well, it's just the two of us, so workload is a big challenge. When we first arrived here, we both had salaried jobs off the holding, and that meant that nothing got done here. So very quickly we realised that one of us would have to continue in a salaried job and one would continue here. That was Colin, and I commuted to Glasgow for a number of years. That's when we brought the bed and breakfast into the equation, because we needed to generate another income stream at that point. Little did we know at the time that that was going to be a really, really important way of communicating our values and of sharing our lives with people. And the kind of guests that we have just seem to love that aspect of it. They recognise pretty much as soon as they get here that there's more to this than just a bed and breakfast. And then a couple of years ago I joined Colin full-time on farm, and fortunately I have a teacher's pension, which is a good pension, and that keeps the wolf from the door. But we have to be honest that I think without off-farm income streams, small holding can be very difficult, which I think is why people see it, you know, sometimes as just a lifestyle choice. And that, yeah, and I suppose applying for grants and things is we don't have the economy of scale. We don't really scale anything up to an extent where we make lots of money out of our livestock or make lots of money out of selling our meat. It's more that we have lots of little enterprises that all contribute to to a kind of even cash flow situation. But I don't. When people come on the small holding courses, we are pretty clear that, you know, we're not millionaires, and you're never going to be a millionaire based on this, and that's not at all why we're doing it. We were talking about values before, and we recognise that this place and our work here have got many things to offer that aren't easily defined by financial measures. That, you know, our well-being, our mental health, all of those things are greatly enhanced, as are the people that join with us on courses or as guests here. All of those things are important to them as well, and they recognise that the finance is only one part of it. We spend quite a bit of time on our courses actually talking about why do you want to do it? Why would you want this life? And also what brings you joy? You know, that feels really, really important to us. Yeah, what brings you joy? And this definitely, this way of living brings us daily joy in going round one of the fields and counting the number of species that are growing there that weren't growing there when we started, to to listening to the birds in the morning, or you know, it all sounds a bit lyrical, but it is slowing down and taking notice is what you're invited to do in a place like this.
One of the diversification routes that Colin and Debbie have taken is running a variety of courses for people to join and learn about the different aspects of running a small holding.
We started off running the introduction to small holding courses.
Organic.
That was our first decision. Basically, I think we'd been here at that point. We'd been here for about 10 years, and we felt as though that we actually then had enough knowledge and also enough information about how you could start running a small holding. Also, we weren't going to be shy of all the mistakes we've made, and also, you know, what we see as the successes. And also at that point, we'd also gone through the conversion process to Soil Association certified organic. So we also thought that there was a lack of courses that actually were directly linked to organic as well. I think there's a lot of people and there's a lot of stuff said about being organic because you don't spray or what have you, but obviously going through the conversion process is a lot more, and also we just thought that was quite a niche area. So at first we just decided to do the introduction to organic small holding course, and then because they were quite successful, we then decided to run them every month from May to October, and it was also a really enjoyable process. So we then decided to expand the courses, and we then looked at doing some traditional crafts, and Debbie had done a basket making weekend and met a really amazing tutor, and so we decided to try and start bringing those to the Lint Mill to offer them. Also, because we're centrally located between Glasgow and Edinburgh, we're also a good, you know, it's easy to get to us, and you know, we've had people from as far away as Wales and, you know, much further up north as well. So I think also our positioning was also a you know, another reason why we thought we'd be able to attract quite a diverse, you know, sort of participant.
Yeah, and also I suppose we wanted a course that we might have liked when we started 10 years ago, and we could go to Wales, but we couldn't leave our animals to go to Wales, or we could go right down south, and there didn't seem to be very much available in Scotland, so that was a thing. Also, we had learnt an enormous amount about being organic through the conversion process, and so you know, it's all very well for people saying, oh, we do everything organically, we're just not certified. It obviously is certified organic smallholding. We get a bit irritated by that perspective, because it's not cheap to be organically certified, but we feel it's important to open ourselves to scrutiny and to be accountable for what we do. We don't just bandy the word organic around as a kind of, well, we don't spray anything, as Colin said, we don't fertilise with chemicals, so therefore, you know, so we really believe in that aspect of it, and we couldn't find anything that just focused on the organic smallholding aspect. We then did a couple of spin-offs from the Smallholding Beginners Day. So the Beginners Day is literally a beginner's day. It takes you on a tour of the holding, pausing at all of the sort of enterprises. So we start with hens, then we move on and look at land management, then we look at growing our own fruit and veg, and then we do goats and sheep and pigs. So it's a tour around the holding, stopping and talking about all of those main things. And we realised there was probably more information that we had that people would want, specialist information. So we've had some couples that have been on. We really entered in, we went full on for the cliche of living the good life, and we've called one of our courses Living the Good Life, a working weekend at the Lint Mill. And so a couple will come and join us for a whole weekend. We ask them to answer some questions before they come about what their aspirations are. We get them to bring photographs of their place if they've already got a small holding, and we sit with maps and photos and plans, and we talk about their ideas, and then they tell us what they'd like to focus on specifically here. So we had a couple that wanted to look particularly at things like hedge planting, tree planting and sheep handling. We've also done a couple of days just focusing on goats, because there seems to be a great interest in keeping goats for dairy. So we do a day that's just specialising on goats. And then, as Colin said, we've in the last couple of years we've developed into heritage craft and writing, and also very excitingly, we also, for the first time last year, we offered what we call a coracle building experience. And it was great fun last year. We hope it's going to be similarly great fun this year. Everybody camps on the birds and bees meadow over there. And a brilliant basket maker called Jane Wilkinson, who's one of the UK's foremost coracle builders. Not that there are so many. She teaches everybody how to build their coracle. So everybody builds their own boat. We eat outdoors and we spend the evenings round the fire pit. It's all very convivial. And then Jane brings her own coracles, so that at some point in the weekend everybody gets an opportunity to, our boundary here is the North Medwyn River, so people get the opportunity to kind of mess about on the river in a coracle and get a real feel for the fun of it. So so that's an exciting one that we do now.
Yeah.
Is there a future for small holdings in Scotland? Colin and Debby have highlighted the realities of running a small holding and how they have expanded over the years to diversify their income stream.
I think that we're very fortunate in as much as we have actually looked at what is available for small holding at the moment, and we apply each year for a small grant from Rural Payments, which is for the less favoured arable scheme, which but on our amount of hectares, acres, that is about £300-400, which obviously, you know, in the scheme of things is not a particularly huge amount, but the funding is there to be taken. And also through the AECS fund, the agro-environmental scheme, we're also able currently to have our organic maintenance payments also covered on a yearly basis. So there are smaller pockets of grants available, but nothing really for anything if you're less than 3 hectares. Currently, the government have got a small producers pilot scheme in place where they've got a steering group which is made up of representatives from Smallholding, Land Workers Alliance, government, and they're looking at hopefully making smallholding and smallholders available to apply for potentially, more grants. What they may be, we don't know yet, but it's obviously something that is being looked at, and hopefully that will make smallholding be taken more seriously, because I think, the more smallholders there are, we are then potentially looking at groups of small producers hopefully being able to sort of service communities potentially. I mean, obviously our main aspect for us is obviously to cater for the B&B guests, and also we have a small market in terms of our meat sales. But if there were more smallholders in the area, there's the potential to grow, you know, a more community-based farming kind of model is there really.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to something that we've talked about already, I suppose, which is how do you make money from a small holding, and quite often if you were salaried and you were earning, I think it was over sort of 30,000 or something, there was a threshold beyond which you couldn't apply for anything anyway. So you were locked out of some of the bigger funding, and there was only very small amounts of funding available. I mean, funding is only one aspect of it, I think. I know that the steering group that Colin referred to is, you know, wanting to look at the Scottish Government's you know, good food nation, net zero aspirations. And we've been operating since the beginning on the kind of Schumacher small is beautiful economic principle that, you know, we all are aware now of the downsides of commercial farming. And this isn't a crack at my neighbours who do an extraordinary job with you know, very few resources and very little appropriate government support. So we've got lots of friends who are commercial farmers who are also struggling. But the scale of things that we're doing now just means that, you know, the methods that have been promoted since the 60s, we're really looking now at the damage that we've been doing to the environment, and to scale down to more human scale work, more human scale holdings, our ability to feed ourselves. You know, this idea that, you know, a farmer used to set seed aside so that they could sow their seeds the following year. Now all of the seeds that they buy from, you know, these great global corporations are infertile. So they're absolutely wedded now to having to go back to the same global corporation to buy the same seeds. So we don't even have the means to grow our own food. So this is an antidote, I think, to all of that. And as Colin said, the more we're able to look at human scale economics, localized economies, feed ourselves, not just more easily or in a more connected way, but in a healthier way. I mean, one of the things that we know is that, you know, the grain that's grown for commercial bread has no nutrients in it. So, you know, we're just kind of in a situation where we're not really feeding ourselves properly. We can't become a good food nation if we're not taking those things into account. Smallholders are doing loads of those things already, and I think what we're looking for is for the government and for the bodies that matter to take that into account, and not just to see people like us sitting in our cottage garden as hobby farmers, you know, that we actually care about the environment and we're making a contribution to that kind of resilience that we're going to need.
Welcome to this crop update for the Farm Advisory Service. I'm Fiona Burnett from SRUC, and we're here at Boghall Farm today with a harvesting of oilseed rape going on in the background in one of the rare dry periods that we've had this August. And really it's been the weather that's been driving most of the crop health concerns at the moment. So a complete contrast to last year where we had quite an easy harvest. This year it's been a very stop-start, difficult harvest for people, very wet, and that's obviously impeding harvest progress, but it's also leading to drying costs and the complications of drying. And the rate behind us here is fairly typical of much in the country, in that it's either been swathed or desiccated for, you know, over a week, often up to a fortnight now, just waiting for those harvest opportunities. And what we're seeing is a lot of blackening coming in on the oilseed rape, most of it alternaria, but some of that related to early senescence. So worth checking where you're noting a lot of blackening in the crop, whether that relates to something like sclerotinia or clubroot. where knowledge of that will obviously inform your future crop rotations or operations. And kind of a similar story for cereals. So again, it's been a very stop-start affair. Winter barley harvest is pretty much finished. And we're now getting into the spring barleys and the winter wheats. But again, quite a lot of sooty moulds coming in on the cereals, which again, that's very weather driven. Worth checking whether that relates to early senescence. So checking for things like eye spot, take-all at the stem bases there. And particularly thinking of things like the fusariums and the mycotoxiums, they lead you to testing for mycotoxins, or particularly where you're home saving seed, then get that tested so that you know the seed health status and can treat appropriately, because the likelihood is there will be quite high levels of fusarium mycotoxium on seed for this year. The crop that we're immediately in front of here, winter beans, we've got quite a lot of botrytis, and again that's a weather-driven disease. It often comes into beans, but not at the high levels that we're seeing at the minute. And we had quite a lot of aphids in this crop earlier, so driven by warmer conditions. So it's really been a tricky harvest. It's ongoing. We also start to think about the crops that we're going to start drilling for next season's harvest. So again, where ground conditions are really wet, it's worth waiting for slightly better ground conditions rather than smearing any of the seed in to wet conditions. But that would be the ideal, but easier said than done.